Tonight, we have two chilling stories that will make you think twice before meeting someone online. What if a simple night out at a bar turned into your worst nightmare? Or a date with someone perfect turned out to be terrifyingly wrong? In our first story, a stranger's persistence becomes a deadly game, while in the second, a seemingly perfect date quickly spirals into something far more dangerous. Have you ever felt that uncomfortable feeling you just can't shake? What would you do if someone wouldn't take no for an answer? Let me know in the comments what's the scariest thing you've ever experienced on a date. Stay tuned. It was a typical Friday night, and Emily, 26, was excited yet nervous as she sat at the bar of a dimly lit pub in downtown San Francisco. The city was alive with energy, but something about this night felt different. She had decided to meet up with someone she'd met online, but her excitement quickly shifted to unease as she waited. Her phone buzzed, and she texted her date, letting him know where she was sitting. Barely a minute had passed when a man, much older than her date, slid onto the bar stool next to her. He was probably in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. He smelled strongly of stale cigarettes and cheap cologne. His breath was rancid, and a crooked tooth stuck out at an odd angle when he grinned at her. "Can I buy you a drink?" he asked, his voice grating and too loud for the setting. Emily forced a smile, hoping her body language would tell him everything he needed to know. "No, thank you. I'm waiting for someone." The man didn't move. Instead, he leaned in closer, his putrid scent invading her space. "I'll buy you a drink anyway," he insisted. "No need to wait alone." Emily's discomfort grew. She told him, this time more firmly, "Please, I'm really waiting for someone." Finally, the man got up, but not to leave. He shuffled over to an empty booth nearby. Emily's unease spiked as she kept an eye on him, hoping he'd just leave. But he didn't. His gaze was fixed on her, and she could feel his eyes boring into her. She quickly texted her date, "Please hurry. I'm really uncomfortable." There was no response. Her heart started to race. Something didn't feel right. A few minutes passed, but the man still hadn't gone. Every time Emily looked up, he was still there, staring. She texted her date again. "Where are you?" This time, his reply was strange. "Running late. Have a drink or two without me." Emily's gut twisted. Why was he acting so distant? She glanced at the man again. He was back, sitting beside her once more, asking where her date was. The tension in the air felt suffocating. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. The man's persistent presence at the bar was becoming unbearable. She tried to focus on her phone, willing her date to respond, but her phone remained eerily silent. The man, now sitting next to her once again, leaned in closer, his breath souring the air between them. "Where's your date?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Emily's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a bad date. It was something much more unsettling. She tried to give him a polite smile, but it felt forced, fake. She glanced at her phone one more time. "Please hurry." Still no reply. The man continued to talk, asking questions about her life, her work, but Emily couldn't concentrate on his words. All she could think about was the growing unease crawling under her skin. His breath, the smell of stale cigarettes, and the way his eyes never left her, it all felt wrong. She had to get out of there. "I'm really sorry," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I need to leave. I'm going to meet my date at another spot." The man just smiled, but there was something cold in his eyes. He didn't move. Instead, he asked, "You sure? You don't have to leave yet. We can have a drink. I'm here for you." The words hung in the air like a thick fog. Emily felt trapped. She sent one last text to her date. "Please, where are you? I really need you to get here." But still, there was no answer. She glanced at the man one last time and quickly stood up, heading toward the exit. Emily hurried to the exit, her mind racing. She needed to get out of there before things escalated any further. As she stepped onto the cold San Francisco sidewalk, she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. The last thing she wanted was to overreact, but her instincts screamed at her to be cautious. She glanced over her shoulder. The man had followed her outside. Her pulse quickened. Emily quickened her pace, heading toward her car, hoping to lose him in the crowd of late-night revelers. But when she reached her car and turned to look, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The same car that had been parked across the street earlier was now directly behind her, idling. Her heart stopped. It couldn't be a coincidence. The man was still watching her. She climbed into her car and locked the doors, her hands trembling as she started the engine. But just as she was about to pull away, a movement caught her eye. The man was standing at the corner of the street, his eyes fixed on her through the windshield. It was as though he knew exactly where she was going. Trying to stay calm, Emily turned the corner, her eyes glued to the rearview mirror. The man's car followed at a distance, keeping pace with her. As she drove, the streets grew quieter, but the nagging feeling of being pursued wouldn't let her go. She glanced at the clock only a few minutes from home. She tried to convince herself it was just a coincidence, but deep down, she knew she wasn't imagining this. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she navigated the familiar streets. Her eyes kept darting between the rearview mirror and the road ahead, her breath shallow. The man's car was still following her, just a few car lengths behind. The more she tried to focus on the road, the more the feeling of being watched consumed her. She turned left at the intersection, hoping to shake him off, but the car behind her made the same turn. Her stomach churned, and a cold sweat began to form on her forehead. She was certain now, this was no coincidence. The man wasn't just lost. He was following her. Her heart raced faster, and a panic she couldn't shake started to settle in. She reached her street and quickly glanced to her left as she turned into her driveway. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She was almost home, almost safe. But when Emily stopped the car and started to get out, her eyes immediately locked on something that made her blood run cold. The man's car had stopped across the street, not directly in front of her house, but one house down. His headlights were off, his engine was still running. A sudden wave of dread washed over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up. She stepped out of the car slowly, keeping an eye on the street. But by the time she reached the front door, the car was gone. Had he really left? Or was he still lurking somewhere in the shadows? Emily closed the door behind her with a soft click, her heart still pounding in her chest. She felt a strange sense of relief as she locked the door and leaned against it, but the unsettling feeling didn't go away. She glanced out the window, expecting to see the man's car still sitting there, but the street was empty. The silence that followed was almost too loud. She walked into the living room, her mind replaying the events of the night. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from her date. "Sorry, I didn't see your message. I just got to the bar. Are you still there?" Emily's stomach sank. The timing of the text didn't sit right. He had just arrived at the bar after she had already left, after the man had been following her. She quickly typed back, her fingers trembling. "No, I'm home, I'm fine. But something's wrong. I think I'm being followed." She hit send, and immediately regretted it. She didn't want to sound paranoid, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Just as she set her phone down, another text came through. This time, it wasn't from her date. "Hey, sorry I didn't see your text until I got to the bar. I'm coming to your house. Which window is yours?" Emily's blood ran cold. She froze, staring at the message. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked toward the window. A shadow passed by the glass. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the chilling text lingered on her phone screen. "I'm coming to your house. The window is yours." Her hand trembled as she gripped the phone, trying to make sense of what was happening. The man from the bar had been tracking her all night, and now he was at her house, trying to find a way in. She rushed to the window, pulling the blinds aside just enough to peek outside. The street was dark, the silence almost suffocating, but then she saw it. A shadow moving across her front yard, a figure moving closer to the house. It was him. Her mind raced. What should she do? Should she call the police now? But the message was clear. He knew where she lived, and he was coming for her. She grabbed her phone again, her fingers shaking as she dialed her sister, Maria. No answer. Panic started to rise in her chest, and she could feel the weight of the situation crashing down on her. Without thinking, she rushed toward the back door, hoping to lock it before he could get any closer. But as she reached for the handle, the door swung open. A cold gust of air swept into the room, and the blinds began to tremble. Someone was trying to push their way inside. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't even think. She turned and ran, bolting for her room. She slammed the door behind her and locked it. The pounding started almost immediately. The pounding on the door grew louder, each thud sending a shockwave of panic through Emily. Her breath came in sharp, quick gasps as she pressed her back against the bedroom door, her heart thundering in her chest. She grabbed the phone, her fingers slick with sweat, and tried calling 911. But as she dialed, the door shook violently. The man outside was trying to force his way in. Emily's pulse skyrocketed. She could hear his muffled voice, grating with frustration and anger. "Open the door, Emily. Let's talk." The sound of his voice made her skin crawl. She could feel her entire body trembling, every nerve screaming for her to run. But she couldn't. There was no escape. She managed to get through to the 911 operator, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Please, someone's trying to break into my house." The operator's calm, steady voice gave her a small sense of relief. "Stay where you are. Help is on the way. Is there anyone in the house with you?" "No," Emily choked out, her gaze fixed on the door, now trembling with each violent knock. "Just me." The operator instructed her to stay quiet and wait, but the man outside wasn't giving up. He pushed harder, his voice more desperate now. "I know you're in there. I just want to talk. Let me in." The pressure on the door was relentless. Emily could feel it buckling under his force. Her eyes darted around the room. She had to protect herself. But how? Jake had never been the type to fall for online dating, but something about Katie's profile caught his attention. She was in her late 20s, intelligent, and her pictures radiated confidence. After weeks of texting, they finally decided to meet in person. Jake suggested a quiet local diner in Denver, a place where they could talk without distractions, or so he thought. When she walked in, Jake's heart skipped a beat, but not for the reasons he expected. She looked off. The first thing that struck him was how different she looked from her photos. Her makeup was heavy, her hair messily styled, and there was something about her eyes too wide, too intense. Jake chalked it up to nerves, but deep down, something in the pit of his stomach twisted. "Hey, Jake," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her voice was higher than expected, almost grating, as though she was trying too hard to be friendly. They sat at a corner booth, the dim lighting casting long shadows over their faces. As they ordered, Jake felt himself pulling back. Katie's energy was overwhelming in a strange, off-putting way. It wasn't just her looks, it was the way she talked. She laughed a little too loud at things that weren't funny, her hands fidgeting with her glass like she was trying to keep herself from spiraling into a frenzy. But the strangest thing happened when the waitress arrived. Katie snapped at her tone sharp, her eyes narrowing. "I said no pickles," she barked, before quickly shifting back to her fake, sweet smile when Jake glanced at her. Jake tried to shake it off. It was a first date after all. People were nervous, but the more they talked, the more uncomfortable he became. She kept glancing around the room as if checking for someone, and every time their hands brushed against the table she flinched, as though startled by her own touch. But the real alarm bells went off when they finished eating. Katie insisted they go for a walk, something that made Jake uneasy. She didn't want the date to end. "Let's not call it a night yet," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "We can go to your place." Jake hesitated. The air between them had grown thick, and his gut told him something was terribly wrong. He glanced around, hoping for any excuse to end the evening quickly. He knew deep down that this wasn't the person he'd been chatting with online. This was something else, someone else, and it terrified him. As Jake and Katie left the diner, a cold wind hit them, sending a shiver down Jake's spine. Katie seemed unfazed, her eyes glinting in the dim streetlight. Her enthusiasm to keep the night going felt more like an obsession than a desire for a pleasant evening. She practically dragged him toward the nearby park, a place Jake usually enjoyed walking through, but tonight it felt eerily deserted. "So, where are we going after this?" she asked, her voice too loud, too eager. Jake forced a smile, trying to remain polite. "I think I should head home. It's getting late." Katie stopped in her tracks, her hand gripping his arm a little too tightly. Why not just stay out for a while longer? Her eyes narrowed in a way that felt almost predatory, like a switch had flipped. Jake felt a wave of unease flood over him, but he didn't want to seem rude. He shrugged it off, hoping she'd drop the subject. But she didn't. "You don't want to go home just yet," she insisted, her tone unnerving, almost as if she was trying to manipulate him. Her fingers tightened around his wrist. "We could go to your place. I'm sure we could have more fun there." Jake's stomach churned. It was like a switch had flipped inside Katie. Her behavior had gone from awkward to unsettlingly insistent. He tried to pull his arm away, but she wouldn't let go. "Please," she whispered, her voice almost a hiss now. "I just want to be with you." Everything about her suddenly felt wrong, and Jake's heart began to race. He needed to get away. But before he could say another word, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Someone was approaching from behind. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as Katie's grip on his arm tightened. He glanced around the park, the shadows stretching ominously in the moonlight. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and a sense of dread settled over him. He looked over his shoulder, expecting to see someone, but there was no one there. Katie seemed oblivious to his mounting anxiety. "You're not scared, are you?" she asked, her smile too wide, too eager. Her voice was tinged with something darker now, as if she were mocking him. "I promise you'll enjoy it." Jake took a step back, his pulse racing. "Katie, I really think I should go home," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, but she didn't let go of his arm. "No, you won't," she replied, almost with a sense of certainty. Her eyes locked onto his, and he felt a chill crawl down his spine. It was like she wasn't just trying to persuade him. She was forcing him into something he didn't want. Suddenly, she leaned closer, her breath cold against his cheek. "I've been waiting for this," she whispered. "You're mine now." Jake recoiled, his body frozen in fear. This wasn't the woman he'd spoken to online. This was someone entirely different, someone dangerous. His mind raced, looking for an escape, but her grip on him was like iron. He tried to tug free, but her nails dug into his skin. The footsteps were closer now, almost right behind him. And just as he thought he was about to break free, he heard a low voice from the shadows. "Leave him alone." Jake's breath caught in his throat as the words, "Leave him alone," echoed from the shadows. His pulse spiked, and he spun around, his body tensed and ready to flee. Standing a few feet away, illuminated by a street lamp, was a tall man, his face hidden beneath the hood, but his posture was firm, unwavering. Katie's grip on Jake's arm loosened slightly as she turned to face the new voice. Her eyes flashed with irritation, then narrowed in recognition. "What do you want?" She spat, the sweet, sickly tone from earlier gone. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence commanding. "I said, leave him alone," he repeated, his voice steady, but full of authority. Katie seemed to hesitate, then took a step back, her grip slipping entirely from Jake's wrist. Jake wasted no time. He took a shaky step away from her, his body still trembling with the adrenaline coursing through him. But he didn't run. Not yet. He wasn't sure who this man was, but his presence alone had made Katie back off. That was enough for now. Katie's eyes flickered between Jake and the stranger, her face twisting into something dark. "This isn't over," she muttered, her voice low and dangerous. Without another word, she turned and walked quickly into the night, vanishing into the darkness. Jake stood frozen, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He looked at the man who had stepped in to help him. "Who are you?" he asked, still too rattled to process what had just happened. The man simply nodded. Someone who was in the right place at the right time. Jake stood there, his mind still racing, as the figure of the stranger disappeared into the darkness. The park felt eerie again, empty, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. It was as if the air itself had thickened, and every sound, every rustle of leaves was amplified in the silence that followed. His legs felt weak as he slowly walked to his car. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see Katie reappearing from the shadows, but the street was empty. The only sound was the hum of the city far off in the distance. He got into his car, locking the door with trembling hands, and stared at the steering wheel, trying to calm his breathing. But then, His phone buzzed, breaking the silence in the car. His heart skipped a beat. It was a message from Katie. "You can't escape me, Jake. I'll be seeing you again soon. You're not safe." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked around, his eyes darting nervously to the dark corners of the street. Was she watching him? Was she still out there, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike? Jake quickly typed a reply, his fingers fumbling over the keys. "Stay away from me. You don't know what you're dealing with." He hit send, but deep down he knew it wouldn't be enough. Katie wasn't just someone he could avoid. She was something far worsey. Relentless, dangerous force he didn't fully understand. The unease settled in his chest like a heavy stone. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Jake couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of Katie's wild, desperate eyes flashed behind his eyelids. The words from her last message replayed in his mind like a broken record. "You're not safe." He tried to shake it off. Maybe she's just playing games, he thought. She'll get bored and move on. But something deep inside told him it was far from over. The next few days felt like a fog. Everywhere he went, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. At work, on the streets, even in his own apartment. Every time he passed a shadowed corner or an empty alley, his heart would race. He would check his phone every few minutes, half expecting to see another message from her. Then, on the third night after the park incident, it happened. Jake was sitting on his couch, staring blankly at the television, when he heard its soft tapping on his window. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the sound came again, a little louder this time. His pulse quickened. He froze, his eyes flicking nervously toward the window. He crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. His breath caught in his throat when he saw her, Katie, standing across the street, her figure half hidden in the shadows, staring directly at him. Her eyes gleamed, and for a moment, everything went still. Jake's phone buzzed again. "I told you I'd be seeing you again." Panic surged through him. She was here, and this time, she wasn't going anywhere. Thanks for watching, everyone. What do you think if you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever had a date or encounter that just didn't feel right? Or maybe you've got a chilling story of your own you want to share. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have any stories you'd like me to share in a future video, let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. Stay safe out there.